Yeah, and of course, as you said, that you had a lot of success with some singles from Blackbird, Rise Today, Watch Over You, songs that, as you said, it became kind of a definitive record. Like, we know what this band is now. And going from that into the appropriately titled AB3, I'm a big fan of the Roman numeral records, speaking of Danzig. Let's talk about that and what the mindset was in terms of, like you said, you had the shotgun wedding of a debut, kind of like the first Audio Slave record, maybe, and then you have this more definitive follow-up. What did you know then going into a third record, and obviously spent a lot of time together now, and you said living together, writing together, touring together. What did you know were some things about what you'd established that you wanted to hone in on and maintain? And what were some things going into that third record that you wanted to explore and maybe add into the stew that weren't there before?
I think the overall vibe, we felt like with Blackbird, we've established that. So we wanted it to be a continuation thereafter. As far as things to explore, like there was a song called Slip to the Void, which was initially this thing that I kind of stumbled onto working on some solo stuff. And long story short, I played something at the wrong tempo and was like, whoa, wait, I really like this. This kind of reminds me of a UFO song. And then the melody and the kind of spooky intro came in. And I remember when I brought that intro into the band, I wasn't sure how that was going to be received because there was an element of keyboards on there. We'd never done that. And I think that when they heard it and then embraced it, I think we started to kind of collectively feel like we can explore some different timbres and textures that we haven't utilized in the past. And we've ever since then tried to experiment with that a little bit here and there on each record. But at the same time, you don't want to. We're never going to put out our disco record. Right. We kind of know what we do, and our fans expect a certain thing from us. So it's that delicate dance of pushing the envelope, arrangement-wise, instrumentation-wise, but keeping the formula in place. And we have to be really careful of that because there are some fans, they're just like, if they had their way, they'd want, One Day Remains or Blackbird over and over again. Then you have other fans who are like, well, that wasn't really my thing, but I liked it when you guys started doing this. So it's hard to keep everybody happy.
It is. And, there's only one AC/DC, the band that makes the same record over and over, and you want them to.
Exactly. That's the genius of it.
Yeah. I often argue that, and you're, again, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you do the disc dive with me, is you're one of the best examples of this. I think in the post kind of Maynard Keenan world, where it went from here's your main project and here's your side project, or here's your solo project, whatever you want to call it, it's much more acceptable in the rock world in the last couple of decades now to view each individual project as equally valid, at least from a creative standpoint, and to think of it as Alter Bridge, the Conspirators, Myles Kennedy, whatever it is that you're doing, it all has sort of an equal footing in terms of how it's perceived. Things don't feel like they're just kind of tossed off as like, oh, here's a little idea I wanted to explore, and that's that. And I argue that because of that, it's an opportunity then for each entity to be much more pure about what it is. Because I think historically when you have bands that, the bands you can think about that made the disco record, did the like big departure where everybody went, whoa, what? I often see that as you just had a lot of ideas and so much creativity and all these people that wanted to try all these different things, and they needed to get different things out of their system, and they only had the one band within those confines to do those things. And when you're a Myles Kennedy, you've got all these different places you can park different things. So if you're like, I'm feeling a certain kind of way about writing a certain kind of song, there's probably an established, viable working project that people like where you can put it. And so in that regard, if you decided you really needed to make a reggae album, we wouldn't have to have an Alter Bridge reggae album.
Right. Yeah, you don't have
another band.
That's a great point. It's a luxury, really, and yeah, you don't have to subject the fan base that you've spent 17 years building on your reggae, experiment, or your jazz odyssey, as I always joke about. But yeah, that's why I needed to do the solo thing, because I was like, well, I've got all these songs, and I want to explore these other styles a little more. And so, but it is interesting, kind of post Maynard, how that's came to.
Yeah, I call it the post Maynard thing.
Yeah, but I think
only because I feel like he's the first one I remember where people are like, no, Perfect Circle, that's just as meaningful as Tool.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
And I think it really helped open the door, and it's just so much more acceptable now in a way that I don't remember that growing up. Growing up, it was always, this person's in this band.
True.
And anything
in fact,
else.
people probably wouldn't have stood for it. I mean, imagine, roll it back to 1985, and I don't think people would. People were very protective of their brand, and now kind of anything goes.
Yeah, and I think that there's a more of a trust and a shared respect in a group like Alter Bridge, for example, where you and Mark are able to do all these different things and not be threatened by one another. You're not sitting at home going, well, he's doing this Tremonti record, and it seems like that was the case with bands historically, and that's really loosened up, and where you can recognize when you're partners like that allowing one another the space to explore those other things is ultimately better for your own relationship together, because you have to go do that.
Absolutely.
Nobody's sitting there. Nobody's resentful because they wanted to try something that they couldn't break out of the band and go do.
Right. You shot down my reggae idea, bro.
Exactly. Go make your reggae record. I'll be here waiting when you're done. Which is, then when Slash comes calling, there's a comfort there, right? Where it doesn't mean the end of Alter Bridge. It just means you're going to go play with Slash. One of the things I love about the Myles Kennedy Slash story is that, that post Snakepit album, that Slash record was a real kind of almost compilation, like a duets album, where it's Slash on the whole record, and then it's, Matt from Avenged Sevenfold, and, all these different singers. It was like, well, they sound like on a Slash song. And the thing I love about your story with him is that you were the guy where he was like, wait, I do want to have a singer. Being at a point in his career where he was like, I don't really want a lead singer in my band. What it says about your talent, but also about your ability to just coexist in all the ways that band members need to. I don't know, the level of comfort, the trust. I just think it speaks volumes to who you are, that you were the guy for someone like Slash to go, oh, no, you know what? I've been divorced twice, but maybe I will get married again. That's a big deal. What do you think it is about that chemistry between the two of you? And what were your, was this another, going into Apocalyptic Love even, was it another situation kind of like that first Alter Bridge record where you're like, I'm not totally sure what our scenario is, but I'm just going to do it, see what happens? Or, what was kind of your mentality going into that, I guess?
Yeah, I think there was a fair amount of that because of what we talked about earlier, that I'm such a realist and not unfortunately, you just have to, you don't want to get your hopes up for nothing. And this business is heartbreaking. So I'd had my heart broken.
Not in this lifetime, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was
Hell
like,
freezes over.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna roll with this. I don't know what's gonna come of this. I did enjoy the process, which with not just Slash, but the entire band. I just and it was and even the crew and everybody was just, it was like a family so early on, and so that was exciting. But at the same time, I always knew that there was this massive thing out there that the world wanted, including myself, to see again. You know what I'm alluding to.
Of course.
And so I was like, I didn't want to have any delusions there that this was, going to be the only thing forever. But I will say that Apocalyptic Love record was a tremendous amount of work, because I was also playing guitar on that record. So I remember kind of doing double duty, track and guitar during the day, and then cutting vocals at night, and working with Eric Valentine, the producer, and it was a lot of work, because of there was also all the Alter Bridge commitments that were going on. So I was just literally just bouncing back and forth between both things, and kind of,
because it doesn't give you time to think like, oh, the last record had Chris Cornell and Ozzy.
Right.
Too busy to think about that.
Yeah, exactly. There was no time to think about that. Exactly. That's actually a really good point. But it ended up being a cool experience, and also I started singing because of Stevie Wonder, and so that record was recorded where Stevie Wonder had cut tracks many times, and I got to hear stories about, oh yeah, Stevie Wonder did this here, and so little things like that. That's the rock geek and the music geek in me that loves that sort of thing. So yeah, it was great, and it's still, the cast of characters involved in that camp. It's a good crew.
And with you, doing all the lyrics, with Slash's name on the face of the record, what's that process like? Is he just like, do whatever you want? Is it carte blanche? Do you bounce things off of one another? Does he look at something and go, maybe tweak that, or or does he just leave it alone? How does that part of it work?
He's surprisingly hands off. I didn't know how that was going to work initially. In fact, on the very first track that we collaborated on, which was Starlight, when I sent the demo back, because he sent the music, and then I put the melody and the lyric to it, and he sent it back. I didn't know how involved he'd be with that, and he was just like, "Cool, let's do this." But there have been a handful of moments where he would say, "Hey man, like, I don't know about this." There would be, on the last record, there was a song called "My Antidote," and I remember we were doing pre-production, and I was still finishing the lyrics. And a lot of times with lyrics, you just have kind of placeholder lyrics. Yeah. And instead of "My Antidote," it was "My Rock and Roll." I just kept singing "My Rock and Roll." And I don't know why. I didn't know what it meant. It just kind of sang easily. And I think he actually mentioned something either to Elvis. I think he mentioned it to Elvis. He goes, Myles he's not going to keep that lyric. And then Elvis is like, "You're not going to keep that lyric, are you?" And I was like, "No, I don't think so. What do you think of "My Antidote?" He's like, "Oh, that's much better."
It's like those. I'm sure you've heard the Metallica demos where Hetfield's just na 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 na. Like he's just it's the phrasing that you, of course, know and love. But he's it's just gibberish. Right. There's no words at all. Yeah,
that's what we do.
It's fun to hear those. Yeah, the na 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 na's. Or Sammy Hagar again. There's stuff where pre-pro stuff where he's like scatting. Yeah, essentially, just Now,
what did you hear pre-pro recordings of? Are those out there?
Yeah, and the Metallica stuff. Man, they're such a transparent band. They actually put some of those demos out, Black Album era, as B-sides.
Oh, no kidding.
So you'd get like the, back in the day of the CD maxi single with the little thin jewel case, you'd buy like Wherever I May Roam, and it would have Sabbath True Live and then Rome demo. And it would be just James and Lars in the garage, and the vocals would all be nonsense.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I have to check that out.
Yeah, cool to like reverse engineer.
Yeah.
Especially songs that you know that well. So going from Apocalyptic Love, I mean, yeah, like you said, back to back, because the fourth AB record came out like the next year, right? I mean, they were like kind of almost on top of each other. So you were tracking them simultaneously?
No, but it was like you make a record, you tour the record, then you go in between the tours, you'd go make a record with the other band. It was insane. In fact, on that next Alter Bridge record on Fortress, I remember having something where I had to had some. I remember maybe it was a Kings of Chaos thing. It was one of those deals where it was like a number of different artists, and we'd go. I think we were maybe in South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. And so we had to shut down the Alter Bridge thing for Fortress, and then I went and did that for a couple weeks. Then came back and finished my vocals, and it was a real pain in the ass for Elvis, because by that point my voice is just shot from all the flying, and it was just like. It was pretty nutty. There were some times there. It was like, how long is the kid going to be able to keep doing this? My manager at the time was just like, he was just waiting for me to drop. He was just a year. At first, people were like, even I remember Eric Valentine said that when we were doing Apocalyptic Love. He was like, so wait, you're still doing Alter Bridge? You're going to do both of these? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, there's just no way. You're going to have to make
on a piece of paper. It sounds totally fine.
It sounds totally fine. And then there was another time around that same period where I was then touring with Alter Bridge, like during the summer. And I'd met Lemmy early on during Slash's first solo record thing. We played something for the Golden Gods Awards, and I got to meet him, and he was so.
I actually saw that. Yeah,
that was fun for me, because I got to meet all these guys. Just geeking out. So I ran into him again at a festival in Europe, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, I'm touring with the other band I play with." And I remember he'd poured me a Jack and Coke, and he had his slot machine there, and I'm just geeking out. And I'm like, this is so cool. What a great moment. And he's like, so you play with this other band, and you play with Slash Conspirators, so you just bounce back and forth, and you're just on the road all the time. I'm like, yeah. And by this point, it had been like 3 years straight. And he looks at me, and he takes a sip of his Jack and Coke, and he just looks at me. This has come from Lemmy. And he says, "You're going to shorten your life, mate." I'm just like, coming from him,
the hardest living rock and roller.
Exactly. So that really got me thinking, like,
Well, he had Headcat, right, which was his group with one of the Stray Cats, I think, and they did rockabilly stuff.
Right.
Man, that's a wake up call for sure.
Yeah.
Lemmy's telling you to take it easy. That's amazing. So going into Fortress, Cry of Achilles, Addicted to Pain. There's what I'm curious about doing with those vocal takes, like you said. When I think about an actor, when you hear about, I just read something the other day about Ezra Miller shooting new scenes for the Zack Snyder Justice League on the set of Fantastic Beasts. When you hear, and I think about actors where it's like, okay, you're the Flash tonight. And this morning you're in Harry Potter land.
Right.
What's that trip like for you as a singer? Because obviously it's not as extreme as playing two totally different characters in two totally different worlds. But there is some comparison, I think, in that it's different groups of people, different chemistry, different vibes with bands. Is there any sort of process to kind of get yourself from one headspace to another when they're overlapping that closely?
Yeah, there's always kind of getting reacclimated, and it generally takes about 2 weeks for me for some reason, because they are very different roles. Even though I'm singing with both of them, stylistically they're different. One I'm playing guitar, one I'm trying to be the front guy. But who's it's hard to be the front guy when you're standing next to the guy in the top hat, because he's such a presence. It's just
the guy whose silhouette is recognizable.
Exactly. And really, there's one guy who does it very well, and his name's Axley. He crushes it. So I think that's the perfect front man, and it's like that's awesome.
There are Mick and Keith.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you get me, total joker up there. You at
the Hall of Fame, if there was anybody else who was going to get up there, that was goosebumps. Well, you sounded so great and did such an honor to those songs. So
I appreciate that. That was the scariest night of my life. So, but yeah, I mean,
you're probably looking at the door.
I was.
I'm like, he might walk in.
I did. I swear to you, I did. I honestly thought he was going to come in at any minute, and it wasn't until I saw everybody start after Billy Joe, or after they got their award and gave their speeches, they started to walk out and get their instruments. I was like, I remember telling myself, shit, I'm gonna be doing this. Oh, geez. But yeah, you know, it definitely takes a little bit of time to kind of reacclimate in each environment. And now with the solo thing as well, it's a whole different process.